Los Angeles is now overrun by the gangs. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where we take trade paperbacks and single issues and we break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then we read it dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. When we last left off, Frank had defeated the Dos Sols gang as they were trying to use chemical weapons in LA. Once he defeated the gang, the Howling Commandos were sent in to kill Frank. They managed to shoot him in his side, potentially killing him, but he managed to get away riding on top of a bus. He ended up in a shady surgeon's backroom hospital, but the surgeon sold him out and he ended up a prisoner of a Central American drug cartel, and he fought against Crossbones. He was then sent to prison by Black Widow to complete a job for her. Now that he's back out, he has just learnt that the second Del Sol brother has arrived in LA and is plunging it into gang warfare. While this is going on, Officer Stone, a friend of Frank's, decided his methods of justice were better than the government's, and she decided to seek revenge on a thug that shot a friend of hers. She was arrested and placed into prison. The Howling Commandos decided to kidnap Frank's only remaining family member and her family in an attempt to lure him back to LA. Everything points to Frank coming back to finish what he started. Both of those videos are linked down below. The city is in utter chaos as explosions are going off all over, and the Dos Sols are on the local news alerting everyone that they now own LA. Frank is in shock. It shouldn't be like this. He took out the gang and he left. Everything should be fine in LA, but he'll deal with it. He's the Punisher. While this is going on, Officer Stone is placed into her cell, and her cellmate welcomes her to hell. Frank goes to see his friend Tugs so he can hook him up with weapons, and Tugs hands off a note that the Howling Commandos left with Tugs, telling Frank that they have his sister and her family. Frank reads it and knows what this is. The Howling Commandos are trying to lure him out, so he's gonna need weapons. Lots of weapons. This city needs punishment, and these commandos are afraid of him. He's going to use that. He hops in Tugs' truck and he takes the bag and a can of spray paint, and he suits up. Frank is done playing around. He wants all of LA to know where he is, so he turns on the lights in the hotel that the Commandos are keeping his only family at. He turns it on in the shape of the Punisher's symbol. Everyone knows that the guy with the skull is going to be right there, and they surround the entire building. The Howling Commandos know that this is bad, so they begin heading downstairs with the Punisher as their target. Frank hops off the elevator and he begins opening fire on the gang members walking the hallways and kicking them out of the windows. He enters the stairwell and he shoots up the men moving up the stairs. While he's doing this, the Howling Commandos are shooting at the gang members in their path, and the entire hotel is being turned into a bloodbath. Frank moves into the kitchen and he grabs a jug of flammable liquids before going back into the hallway, where he runs right into the Howling Commandos. He begins dumping the liquid onto the floor, mixing it in with the water from the sprinklers, and he tells the sergeant, "You thought you could get to me by kidnapping the last of the Castellonis. I abandoned that name long ago, along with the sentiment that it implies. You dragged innocent people into this fight. I come to these fights expecting death. You brought civilians here. You gave up the flag, Frank. I gave up the flag for another." Then Frank drops a match on the ground, lighting everything on fire. Using it as a distraction, he runs around it and he gets behind the Commandos, where he shoots one of them in the chest and then he punches another one of the men out. Then, he gets shot in the chest from above and behind. He falls to his knees in a pool of blood, and then he gets shot again. The Howling Commando sniper took the shots through the floor using a tracking technology. Sidewinder, the commander, walks over picking Frank up, and they haul him off with the family to the extraction point. While this is going on, LA is spiraling further into chaos, and at the local prison, the doors have all swung open and most of the prisoners have fled. The current leader of the Dos Sols is walking through ensuring everyone has gotten out to cause more chaos in LA, when he happens across Officer Stone, asking why no one let her out. She tells him that she's a cop, and he decides to open the door because it's time for her to see what the Dos Sols thinks of cops. The Howling Commandos all load up onto the roof and they leave the hotel with Frank and the family. Frank asks why they took his sister, and Sidewinder tells them that they were told to. They follow orders. While back in the prison, Officer Stone walks out of her cell covered in blood. She managed to beat down every single one of the gang members, though the leader left before she could bring the fight to him. She walked over and saw the fallen guards, and she grabbed their batons before walking out into the raining night of LA. Back with the Howling Commandos, Frank asks Sidewinder the big questions. Why is a street-level vigilante suddenly the target of the sharpest point of the Special Operations Spear? And who is supplying the Dos Sols with the chemical weapons? Sidewinder ignores it, stating it's way above his pay grade. And then the mysterious commander behind all of it calls him. Kill Frank and hold the family. The men Sidewinder is talking to are some of the highest individuals up in Washington. The secretary. So Sidewinder loads up his pistol, and as he walks through the National Guard training center they moved him to, he comments, There are a lot of weapons here for a National Guard training center. It's like they were stocking up for something for weeks in advance. Sidewinder puts Frank into a Humvee and he drives him out into the desert where he kicks him onto the ground prepared to end this. Frank rolls over and he tells Sidewinder, "Placed under arrest, confinement prior to trial. Immediate steps shall be taken to inform him of the specific wrong of which he is accused." The Uniform Code of Military Justice? Really? I thought you put your tags in a drawer, Frank. But you didn't! Ask yourself why the military is only moving in on Los Angeles now. Why were they ready for this? Who benefits from this? From me dead? You tell me. I don't know, but I can find out. Sidewinder thinks about it. This is all wrong. What would you need? Back in LA, Stone is taking the fight to the Dull Souls by beating each and every one of the members that she finds. She has snapped. She will beat everyone down. But overhead, the military is moving in with heavy prejudice, using helicopters and various weapons. Sidewinder takes Frank to a Humvee and he makes him promise. No death. Frank tries to tell him that only the ones that deserve it, but Sidewinder tells him, no, he'll let him do this, but no death. Frank agrees, but the Howling Commandos are to keep his family safe and order them some takeout. As Frank preps up, he thinks about it. Don't treat good guys like you treat bad guys. Someone in Washington once told him that. At a dinner years ago when he shined his boots and pressed his shirts. That's a code increasingly more difficult to practice. And not just because the line between the two is more and more wreathed with smoke and covered in ash, but because I'm not the only good guy drowning and they don't have much time left. Sidewinder walks back in with his team and he calls up the secretary to inform him Frank Castle is dead. But Frank now has a gun and a vehicle and no one is expecting him. Over in LA, Stone is walking through the wreckage and she sees the news reports. Riots in LA, all started by one man, Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher. But don't worry, the military is here in force to stop this mess. They are presenting this as Frank Castle's issue. She can't believe that she used to have breakfast next to him every morning. She could have prevented all of this from happening. It's all his fault. Over in Washington, D.C., the secretary is on his way home when Frank takes out his escort and drops a grenade into his car, kidnapping him. He then takes him to the Navy Army golf course where he clubs the man responsible for all of this. Explain to me why you sent the Howling Commandos after me, Mr. Secretary, while you still have your teeth. And then we can talk about the chemical weapons. This is bigger than your little vendetta, Frank. It's already done. The U.S. has lost control of its own cities. White-caped maniacs, blind Halloween heroes. The public has been lured into a false sense of security. They believe they're protected by freaks in costumes, or freaks with PTSD. They need to be reminded why they need a government, why they need infrastructure. What about the chemical weapons? I think you know, Castle. We sent them to the Dull Souls. It was their choice to test it out on the civilians. They were supposed to use them on LA, but you stopped that plan. Fortunately for us, Del Sol had a brother to finish this. Frank has what he needs and he heads off to the nearby cemetery, but that's when he hears the choppers incoming. They're sending in a team to rescue the secretary. Frank hops on his motorcycle and that's when he sees the shadow of a man with wings. They didn't send in a Black Ops team this time. They sent in Captain America. At least the current Captain America. Falcon Sam Wilson. He comes swooping in and he grabs Frank off of the ground, carrying him into the sky. And Frank realizes he's outmatched, so he needs a new plan. He pulls out a flashbang to stun Captain America, and they both hit the ground. Cap keeps hitting Frank, telling him that he's gone too far. It's time for this reign of terror to end. Frank hits Cap hard, and he makes a break for it to the street nearby where he jumps onto the side of a car. He then climbs up onto the roof to open fire on Captain America as he comes flying back in. But Cap throws his shield, throwing Frank off of a bridge as they are crossing it. Captain America then grabs Frank again and they fly over to the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pond, where they hit the ground hard. Frank then throws a grenade near Cap, stunning him. He then pulls the pin on a second grenade and holds it. If you hit me, I'll drop this and die. My death will be on your hands. Now you can either hear the truth or you can kill me. Then Frank throws Captain America a tape recorder, the one that he taped the secretary's confession on. He then runs off holding his grenade. If you don't like what you hear, you can hunt me down. I won't be hiding. But if you come, I'd bring a few more Avengers if I were you. Frank heads back to LA where he meets with Tugs. The National Guard worked and they cleared out Dos Souls, and their leader is fleeing for the border. Frank knows the National Guard won't stop him. He's a key witness that can claim the government was involved, but he trusts an Avenger to turn in that tape. And he knows that he can stop this boss man. He wastes no time hunting down the leader of Dos Souls by blowing up their car and dragging the man out into the desert. I'm gonna make an example out of you. He drives him into the middle of LA traffic and then he fires a flare, getting the news choppers to watch. He then throws the man down into the middle of the street, letting every criminal know. He'll weed out everyone, wherever they're hiding. The leader of the gang begs and pleads with Frank not to kill him in the middle of the street. But Frank loads his gun, puts on his mask, and he blows the man's brains out right there and then. The cops let him walk away and Frank goes to get some breakfast. This is where the Punisher belongs, on the streets fighting the gangs, and while the Howling Commandos did destroy his cache of weapons, he can still do his job, and he walks out onto the streets to fight the gang members. But as he does his job, a woman walks over to him in a hoodie. She drops the hood to reveal Officer Stone, still on the run from killing someone for killing her friend, still on the run from breaking out of prison. And right now, she stabs the Punisher, telling him that it's all his fault, and then she stabs his dog. Everything is his fault, everything was fine! Frank tries to stop her. Officer Stone! But she stops him there. I'm not Officer Stone anymore. You can call me Memento. She then leaves him there to bleed. Frank picks up Loot, his dog, and while bleeding, he carries him out into the streets of LA. I never thought I'd make it out of this alive. That's why I wear this skull. It's Memento Mori. Then Frank sits down to bleed on the steps. Remember that you must die. I'm sorry it took us so long to complete this storyline. I really don't know why I forgot about it, but I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want more Punisher, let me know in the comments down below. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Comicstorian, follow me on Twitter at Comicstorian. And if you want to get more amazing soldier-oriented comic books, then go check out Eligible Monster, where we've got the Call of Duty storylines all in comic book form, all on the channel. I'll leave the link to that down below, and I'll see you guys next time right here.